the numerals as a symbol, meaning that this numeral is attached to some object, or to some number of objects.
Oh yeah, they are. Did you open those up?
And Jenny, this is your classroom.
How many do you think are in there?
This is something I just made myself out of an old shoe bag. I attached index cards with the numbers from 1 through 10 onto different pockets, and then in each pocket there is a different little trinket, and the number of trinkets in the pocket correspond to the number that is written on the outside of the pocket. And here my 4-year-olds are playing with it, and discovering that in pocket number 2 there are 2 bouncy balls.
Where'd it go?
In pocket number 5 there are 5 monster fingers.
Number 2.
And I'm encouraging them to count how many things they pull out of a pocket, and also to recognize that you can know how many things are in the pocket, not just by counting the objects, but by looking at the number, and that will tell you.
Oh, they can go in any of them. Did you figure out how many I had?
No,
How do you think you could figure it out?
they counting them.
By counting them? You think there's another way?
10. 7.
Yeah.
I think this is a great idea because it could be teacher-directed
The
or
number on
child,
the pocket.
child-directed, and it could work well
How
both.
many there are
both
inside
ways.
the pocket?
What's your number 3?
How many are there in 3?
3.
Pretty good. How'd you figure that out?
Because I looked.
Did
And
you count
it
them?
really works well with a variety of ages, too, I
Well, then
think.
how did you know?
My 3-year-olds use this also, but they use it very differently. They're not as familiar with the numerals, and they
How
don't
many bouncy things are there?
connect
Bouncy things came from
to the idea that if there is a 10 on the outside, there are 10 on the inside, as well as the 4-year-olds do. So they really have to sit and count very slowly. It takes them a long time, but they're really willing to put the effort into it.
They're all very focused.
Also, the questions that you ask the children direct them to think
many of
more
those are
about
there?
what it is that
Yeah.
they're doing. And having funny fingers in there, it didn't hurt.
Ooh,
You know,
nice
it has to be
fingers.
things that they'll enjoy playing with.
I have one of those fingers.
You
I have one of those fingers at home.
So another way you can tell where they came from is the numbers say on there. So you remember where those came from? Let's fix that again.
I'm going to look at number 8. Those bombs are...
How many fingers do you have?
Things are
3. Where are the rest of them?
over there.
How many are missing?
2.
Look at your fingernails. Somebody needs to cut them. They're kind of long.
And they're witches'
Oh, they're not real.
nails. They're
Witches' nails
Yeah. Can I please have one of
or
those?
monster nails?
Yeah, monster nails. Can I please have one
You know
of
what?
monster nails?
Maybe, can you think of a way that lots of people could play with them, Brett?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
Everybody has one.
That's such a good idea. And then how many people could play with them?
Hey, look.
Critical thinking and playing.
5. Do you think you could give one of those to somebody so that 5 people could play
Who
with them?
wants to play with this nail?
Oh, how'd you know it went back in 8?
Because I saw 8 on the back.
Oh,
I know this goes in 5.
how'd you know that?
I know
Pretty
this goes
smart.
in 5.
Where does the ball go?
The ball go? The ball, this goes in number 2.
Where is 2?
How do number 3?
How many children can be working in this area at one time, comfortably?
Well, they don't keep the little objects in that area.
Okay,
to tell you
that's
the
what I
truth.
was
They take
wondering.
them all over the room. So really, as many children as
Okay.
want to. And they're really good about putting them away. I think it helped. We put the numbers on the objects in the pockets also, so that in case the child was only playing with 4 of the 8
Yes.
worms, she could look at the worm and say, oh, this goes back in pocket number 8.
Right, this particular incident, I think, is very important in illustrating how children learn about what the numerals mean.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait.
Maybe we should lie them out. Would that be easier?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8. 9.
Now look at that number again. Is that still, do you think it's a 6? Or do you think it might be a different number?
9.
6 and 9 kind of look the same, don't they?
You can tell
How?
how to put them in the numbers.
Oh, yeah. They all have the numbers on so we can
That was
remember.
such an important lesson that that child had learned at that point, because he counted and he got the numeral, he counted the number correctly, and then he identified it with the correct numeral. He said it couldn't be 6 because he had just counted that it was 9. And then you asked him, you know, well, what is it? And he said, it's 9. And he'll never forget that. All right, let's go on. These are some children playing a game. Can you tell us anything about this game, Jenny?
Well, we've had it on the shelf, and the kids always play it, and I thought it would be a good game to illustrate the concept of numerals. But when I went to find out how it's played, I saw that there were no instructions in the box, and I don't know if the children know how to play it or if they have invented their own version of playing it, but they sit and play it every day. Basically, there's a die, and it has 6 sides, but it only counts up to 3. So there are 2 1s, 2 2s, and 2 3s. And they roll it, and they have to find the piece that corresponds to the number that they get. And as far as I can tell, other than that, the rules are always changing.
Some of the children are probably figuring out what is 3 by counting the, because the humps on it.
Right.
But some of them are using the numerals, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly. There are numerals on the pieces, and then there are little cylinders that are attached somehow. And the piece for 3 has 3 cylinders, piece for 2 has 2.
And there are many games that one can find where the children really have to begin to recognize the numerals to know how far to count, on how many spaces to go, and so on.
One of the games that we like most is a game called Trouble. There's a dice in the middle and you pop it, and whatever number pops up, they actually take the marker and move it with their hands. And so there's a visual, and there's also, you know, competition within the next person. Well, I counted and I got further, so that's also a fun
Yeah,
game.
this is a step above the kinds of games where children are counting the space based on, like Candyland, where they get 1 block of color or 2 blocks of color, they count the blocks. Here they're actually looking at the numeral, and the numeral tells them how many spaces to go. So it's a slightly more advanced concept that we're dealing with
Do you
here.
have to put them next to each other, or you can put them anywhere you want?
Hey, you got 2 3s. No. Yes, you do. 1, 2. Open it. You only have to put 1 on, Laney. No,
Children are really enjoying this particular activity in which they are using numerals. And in this activity, Levita is making pizza with the children. And I included this in numerals because, Levita, you are using a recipe card with numerals. You want to tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, the children cook often, and we discovered that one way of showing the children is by actually using the recipe card and tracing the spoons that they would be using so they can identify how many they need by looking at a card that puts the number on it and that also gives them an idea of what utensil to use. We use the snack cards every day when we have snack. We'll put 1 out or 2 out or 3 or so forth, and they know exactly how many pieces of snack they should take. Everyone washes their hands before all cooking projects. That's most important. And each child takes the time to create their own sandwich. It's enjoyed by everyone.
Okay, then you can scoot to the next. Are you going to put sauce on yours first? Yeah. Okay.
Hey,
Okay, if you leave it in one spot.
As you see, everyone has their own way of creating their pizza muffin.
And I think in this visual you can see the recipe card with the numeral. And sometimes you have other numerals besides one.
Yes, we go up to 10.
Okay. I'm going to put the sauce over here, and I'm going to move it around a bit so you can reach it better.
Make your own sauce, then this will be all put on it, right?
While this activity is going on, perhaps we can talk a little bit about some of the other activities that you do in your classroom which enable children to get more experience in dealing with numerals and the relationship of the numerals to the number of objects.
There are quite a few flannel stories that we use that offer children the opportunity to look at the numbers and to match it with whether it be donuts or bottles. A lot of times we'll say how many bottles of pop on the wall, and they'll match the bottles with the number that is on the actual bottles.
So they
And
put
they'll
that
take
up on
turns.
the board.
Yes, and they'll put it up, and each person will have a turn to come up, and we'll go from 1 to 10. And each child will have an opportunity to count the number as they put it up. Then we play dominoes, but they play it the way that they know how. Whether it's a 3-year-old or a 6-year-old, they'll put it in a way that they most understand by matching the number by the dots. We've created some number cards, and they'll match the number card with the dots on the dominoes.
So you have many other kinds of
Yes.
activities. Jenny, you mentioned some
Yes,
things.
well, I organize my class thematically, and whenever I'm doing a theme, I try to think of different concepts in math, science, whatever, that seem to fit the topic. And we did a unit on communication, and something that just followed naturally out of that was the idea of phone numbers. And we made phone books for every child in the class with all of the children's phone numbers in them, and we put out a bunch of real phones that weren't connected to the wall in our dramatic play area, and let the children call each other and encourage them to look in the phone book, look up their friend's name, see their friend's number, dial the number exactly by matching the number on the paper to the number on the phone, and it was really successful. They were really interested in looking at the numerals in that way.
So that it's not only learning numerals, but they also have to learn what the numerals stand for eventually. Many children can count or they can read the numerals, but they don't always put the two together. And some of these experiences are designed to help them make that connection between the number of objects and the numerals that stand for that object. Well, I think we've covered the topic, and we're going to close at this